All right. So, my name is Khani Sorkin. I am the Director of Community Projects here at Seed St. Louis. I work with the community gardens and some school gardens, helping them get up and running, making sure they have everything they need, both in terms of physical items and in education. And this is indoor food gardening. So, first, a little bit about Seed St. Louis. We are about 40 years old. We were established in 1984. We just had our 40th anniversary last year. And we really try to connect food with people. We have about 250 gardens in our network. That's that map there. So we're all over the St. Louis region. And we do a lot of stuff. We can provide one on one consultations. If you are having problems with your plants, we can come out, see what's wrong with them. If you need help with engagement, we can help you brainstorm. We have a volunteer network. We've got garden and orchard supplies. And we have specialized support to school projects. So we can help with curriculum and, again, with all of those items that you may need in a school or garden. And we also sell low cost seeds. So you may have come to our seed sale a couple weeks ago. And we do, again, garden and orchard supplies, vegetable seedlings and plant sales. We are working on getting our demonstration garden up and running again. We teach classes like this one, and we have an annual conference that's just in a few weeks that is for network gardens and is also open to the public. So, to start, why would you grow plants inside? Well, if you're anything like me, you have no open windowsill space in your house. You are plant obsessed. Or you want to grow tropicals that just can't handle our winter. So we have a lot of food that we can get from the grocery store, especially fruit that we just can't grow here. But inside you can. Or you're just out of space outside, or you don't have outdoor growing space to begin with. So we can get started going over plant needs. Every single slide on here we could talk about all day. I'm going to try to cover the basics. Please put all of your questions in the Q&A and I will try to get to them. And I also just want to say that there are lots of different ways to do things. I'm going to talk about what I have experience with. If you have a different experience and it works for you, it works for you. You don't need to change it. So, first off, placement with your plants. Think about your home. Where are the sunny windows? Where are they going to get light? And if you want to do grow lights, is there an outlet nearby? What about water? Are you wanting to grow plants on the opposite side of your sink? That's going to get annoying. What about pets? Can pets reach them? Some plants are toxic to pets, and some pets are just jerks and will eat your plants. Also important is airflow. I think this is one of the most underrated needs of plants. Don't grow your plants in a closed closet. That is stagnant air. Small room, not good airflow. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but it can cause issues with fungal diseases. So lighting, here's a little graphic. In the northern hemisphere, southern facing windows are the best, especially in summer. Take a look outside. Our winters are kind of dreary, so not that much sun in the winter. But if you have a south facing window and you want to grow stuff in the summer, that's going to be great. East and west is also pretty good. So all plants need light. Pretty much every edible plant you're going to grow is going to want at least 8 hours of direct sun. And when I say direct sun, I mean direct sun, like sunbeam coming onto the plant. Like I'm sitting here, you can see the window behind me. If you got a plant here, not getting much direct sun. I need rays on plants. You want the sun coming in and hitting that plant. That is their food. They need it. And if you don't have a good window like that, or you want to grow things year round, again, our winters kind of suck, you're going to want to get grow lights. This is one that we could sit here and we could talk about all day. I'm going to try to give you the rundown of it. So a watt, when you're going to buy grow lights, watts, that's just how much power it uses. Doesn't really affect your plant growth that much, but it will affect your utility bill. Lumens, this is the actual light output. So lots of factors can go into this. Typically, try to aim to like 3,000 to 4,000 lumens, something like that. Things that can affect this are like actual distance to the light. If you put a $5,000 lumen light on your ceiling and your plants are all the way down here, that doesn't really matter. Day length, in general, I like to do 12 to 14 hours. For some people, that's too long. That's how I like to grow my plants. I like to maximize the amount of light that they get. But you don't want to leave the light on 24 hours. Plants need rest too, just like us. So keep it to 12 to 14 hours. For smaller plants or seed starting, shelving lights are great. Hopefully you can see behind me. I've got my own little setup here. So I've just got, this is a basic steel shelf, and I've got, these are some Barina grow lights underneath here. I'll turn it on, but it's probably going to blind us. So I just have it on a timer, and it comes on and turns off automatically. And you can see up here, I've got some basil seedlings. So this is exactly where I started the seedlings, and this is where I've been growing them. And I just did this here in my living room. This whole setup is maybe $200 or so, maybe a little bit less. It kind of depends on what you go for. I highly recommend LEDs. If you are buying new grow lights and you have the money for it, just go with the LEDs. They are more expensive than, say, fluorescent, but they last longer and they use less power. So in the long run, it'll actually be cheaper. And plus, they're getting really accessible now. You can find them really easily online. And then for larger plants or trees, there are some things like the stands. So this is here on the floor, and it's got these movable arms. So I can adjust it to have plants on either side, a bunch of plants right here, and I can move it up and down depending on the height of the tree. Those are also fairly inexpensive and easy to find online. This photo here is actually of our office. That's a vanilla orchid in the bottom. We've never gotten it to bloom though. That is a common thing with indoor foods. They don't always bloom as often as they would outside, but that's to be expected. So this is just a grow light bulb that we have on a rope that's hooked up to the ceiling so we could raise and lower it pretty easily. All right, soil. This is another one. Lots of different options out there. For germinating seed, this is a really common thing to do inside. A lot of people will start seeds inside. You want a germination mix. So a lot of things will just be called germination mix, but what you're looking for is small particles, no or very little bark, because itty bitty plants like this, they have little baby hair roots that can dry out and be damaged really easily. So you want something that can hold on to water pretty well while also having good aeration. And then for established plants, if you bought a tree somewhere, you bought a lemon tree, you want to put it in just standard potting soil is good for most things. If anyone has any specific questions, you can put it in the Q&A or you can Google it and we can talk about it because there are lots of different options. So pretty much you want a mix of compost, something organic, and then something inorganic. So like perlite, or sometimes I'll add like lava rock, something a little chunkier that adds drainage and aeration. Fertilizer, I normally recommend just adding Osmocote into your mix. Osmocote is a slow release fertilizer. That means that I don't have to do anything. And if you're growing a lot of plants, that makes it a lot easier. You could also add more liquid fertilizer or compost if needed. The liquid fertilizer that I go to, so there's an NPK, which is those 3 numbers that you'll often see on fertilizer. I go for like a 15, 16, 17, something like that. That's pretty generic. Like most things will be happy with that. And then there are also like specific fertilizers. You can get those. You will be fine. Whatever you want to use. And then watering. This is one of the hardest things to do inside. But knowing when to do it, you just water it when it's dry. Just in general, for most plants that you're going to be growing inside, just if you take a look at the soil, see if it's dry, go ahead and water it. You don't want it to stay wet. You don't want it sitting in water. You don't want it constantly soaked. That's going to bring fungus gnats. It could cause root rot. A whole bunch of problems can come from that. But you also don't want it to go bone dry. So honestly, every couple of days, I just check on my plants, and if it's dry, I water them. The exception is that lavender. Lavender likes to go pretty dry, drier than you think. And you want to fully saturate your soil. So I've got a GIF here. This is me watering one of my euphorbias. don't eat this plant. This is probably a bad example to use in this, but it was the only GIF I had. This is in my bathroom sink. And what I want you to see is how I'm filling the water up to the top and that water is coming out the bottom. That's really important. If you have a plant and it says, give it 1 teaspoon every 3 days, don't do that. That's not enough water. Fully saturate the pot. You want that entire soil column to have water accessible for that plant, and that's good for root growth. But that can be really hard when you're inside and you don't have a big enough saucer because you got to add a lot of water to it. Well, that might overflow the saucer. So I would say go up in size for saucers just to be safe. And sometimes you'll have to dump them. And this leads right into the container. So, number one thing, look at me. Your pots need drainage. I know you found a really cute and pretty pot at the thrift store and you should use it, but you should drill holes in it first. All of your pots need drainage. I don't want anyone to tell me that you put rocks in the bottom. Don't do that. Drill holes in your pots, okay? It will cause root rot. It will flood the plant and you will lose your plant. Drill holes in your pots. Make sure that it has drainage and that there's a place for the water to go. So seedlings, if you are starting seeds, if you want to keep them inside or you need them to get a little bit bigger before you put them outside, typically like 4-inch pot or so. Here's an example. This is a 4-inch pot. This is like very much a standard nursery 4-inch pot. And do it when they're like a couple inches tall or if they have about 4 true leaves. So most of the time when you plant a seed, you'll see more like oval shaped leaves come up. And then you'll get leaves that look like the marigolds or the lettuce that you're growing, stuff like that. If it's got 4 of those, it's probably ready to move up. So just general transplanting rules. Move up to a new pot when you see roots coming out the bottom. Let's see, I actually don't think this one does have any. Well, if it did, you would be able to just lift it up and see if there are roots coming out the bottom. And if there are, that's a good sign that it's root bound. It needs more space to grow. And go ahead and move it up about 2 inches. So just in general, you got a 4-inch pot, plant is pretty root bound, move it up to a 6-inch. If you just bought a tree and it's in a 10-inch pot and it's starting to grow a little bit, put it in a 12-inch pot. Now, once you get to a certain size, once they're pretty big and you got trees taking up your whole living room, then you can go like 4 to 6 inches at a time. So if you have a lemon tree that's in a 20-inch pot and it's root bound, yeah, try 24, 26-inch pot, something like that. But be careful, you don't want to move up too soon. You don't want to put an itty bitty plant this size in a pot this big, because a plant this big is going to have roots that are this big. And now you got all this soil that you're watering and you're fully saturating exactly like I told you to, but there aren't roots there to absorb it. And it's going to flood, it's going to root rot, and that can kill your plant. So pests. This is a bigger issue inside because outside we live in an ecosystem. Probably not for much longer, but for now we still live in an ecosystem. And so there are natural predators outside that will eat the bugs that are on your plants. But inside you probably don't have that. So you got a couple options. Pesticides. I really like neem oil, horticultural soap, and horticultural oil. I have actually found that a mix, like a spray bottle, just like this one, with a mix of horticultural soap and horticultural oil does really well fighting bugs specifically, while also not poisoning humans. You know, don't put Roundup or anything on the food that you're going to eat. You could also do biological control. Ladybugs, mantids, and lacewings. These are the 3 kind of like they'll just eat anything. I know it might sound really silly to you, but if you have like basement grow lights are really common. I have them. I released 1,000 ladybugs in my basement and they took care of it. But for small infestations, just simply wiping down the plant with diluted isopropyl, that can just do it sometimes. So what I do is I like to wipe down every surface like every couple days until I see the problem go away or at least improve a lot. A lot of times bug pests will leave sticky residue. So if you're looking at the top of a leaf and it looks kind of shiny, kind of sticky, look at the leaf above it and check the bottom, see if there are bugs. So this photo here is of mealybugs. They're like white and fuzzy. Scale is also pretty common. I mean, fungus gnats are common too. But if you just wipe down the plant, that should at least keep it at bay, and sometimes it'll fully take care of it. And then fungal issues. So this goes back to the airflow that I was talking about. If you have stagnant air, it's much more common for fungal spores to land and then infect your plants. So a lot of people will just have a fan on their plants. If you've got a plant shelf, just like set up a box fan. It doesn't have to run 24/7. If you just want it on at night, that's fine. It'll just help increase that airflow. And sometimes you can just use Lysol. If you have powdery mildew, which is really common if anyone has grown pumpkins, that's really common here. I mean, probably don't grow pumpkins inside, but just as an example, if you grow pumpkins and you see that white powderiness on the leaves, that's probably powdery mildew. It's pretty common here in St. Louis summers. But you can get it inside. And honestly, sometimes just kind of lightly spraying it with Lysol does the trick. Okay, so transplanting outdoor plants. Let's say you are growing taro, which is a tuber and looks kind of like elephant ears. It's really pretty. My boss, Dean Gunderson, grew some last year, and it's really delicious too. So let's say it's getting cold and you want to keep growing them inside. Well, that's a pretty major change. If you're digging it up, you're messing with all those roots, you're putting it in a brand new environment, brand new soil, less light, that sort of thing. It's pretty hard on them. So consider propagating or collecting seeds rather than transplanting. Or you can grow it in a pot year round that can be moved inside or outside. And I'll talk about that more in a bit. But citrus is really common. My mother has a lemon tree that she loves more than I do, more than she loves me. And she just keeps it in a pot and it'll be moved outside in the summer and inside in the winter. But you want to place it in as similar of an environment as you can, which is hard because, I mean, your home in the winter will never be anything like the St. Louis summers. And when you're moving it back outside, let's say you got a potted plant you brought in and you overwintered it inside, you want to acclimate it. This is really, really important. So I basically go in increments. I place it in a shady spot, full shade outside for about a week, few days. And then I do morning sun, but afternoon shade. And then I place it into full sun. So even if you have a grow light, even if it's sitting in the window getting the same amount of sun, you got a window kind of filtering that light. It can be a big shock, and it will burn your plants if you take an indoor plant and put it outside in full sun in the middle of May in St. Louis. So this is the other side of our office. Those are banana trees. So like I said, basically you want to try to keep it pretty similar to outside if you can, but it is hard to replicate heat and humidity and lighting. So go back to our grow lights. You want to have bright light, keep them on 12 to 14 hours. Break out the humidifier if you can. You know, St. Louis summer, it's like 105 and 120% humidity. Well, today it was like 40 and 13% humidity. Completely different. And a lot of these plants come from the tropics and they like having pretty similar growing conditions year round. So for propagation, there are a few different things we can do. Germinating seeds. This is a QR code to the YouTube recording of the starting seeds class that Dean Gunderson taught. And he and I co-taught it a few weeks ago. We're actually doing it again at the Tool and Seed Swap by popular demand. So I think that's February 12th. So you can register for it on our website. But I'll go over it real quick. Grow lights work best for even lighting. Honestly, I wouldn't even try to start seeds in a window because it's not enough sun. They're going to get lanky. In the winter, there isn't any sun. So there's my setup. You could use it whatever you want. I put the seeds in there. It's like 1.5 feet maybe from the lights. You want a good amount of light. And you can also buy these shelves in like 4 foot wide. If you're real serious about your germinating seeds, you can get a huge shelf of these. And you want high humidity for seeds. So frequent misting, like this thing that I showed you. And then you're going to want a humidity dome. So this is what we call a 10-20 tray. It's pretty standard. It's like 1 by 2 feet. And then this is a humidity dome. You can get these anywhere, any garden center, stuff like that. I'm going to kind of crush the basil here. But it just sits on top like this, and it keeps that humidity high in there, again, for those itty-bitty baby roots that don't like to go dry. And you can take it off, once you see seeds coming up, or I let them get a little bit bigger because I don't like to mist them as often. Once you take the humidity dome off, you'll have to mist them more often. Again, you want to keep them pretty moist. I mist like multiple times a day when I was growing these, when I was starting them. And bottom heat. You can also get seed starting heating pads, any garden center. In general, it's a good idea. It's going to help you speed up the germination. They might be a little bit happier. It's not needed for most things. I will say, growing coffee from seed, you have to have bottom heat. They will not germinate without that bottom heat. On the other hand, leafy greens hate the heat. They're a cold crop, so you don't want to do heating pads with the leafy greens. Yeah, like I said, mist them multiple times a day, or at least once a day, but don't let them stand in water. They still need air in the soil. Okay, and then cuttings. So I'm going to scooch this back a little. What I have here, this is called a Vix plant. It's pretty similar to mint, and it's really ugly. So we're going to propagate. I'm going to show you right now how we're going to propagate it. So I've got my little shears, and these are clean. So I just dipped them in isopropyl before this. And then I have a jar of water. So I'm going to cut a piece about 3 inches long. Maybe I'll do a little bit more than that. Just like that. And this lost all of its leaves down here, which is part of the reason I want to repropagate it. But if it did, I would remove all of these. So, gosh, I really hope you can see. If you see these little bumps and they're kind of brown, those are nodes. That's where leaves and roots come out of. So you want to make sure that you've got a couple nodes in the water, and then done. And those will grow roots. This one is really fast. Mint family is really good at water propagating. And this is one that I showed you earlier. I water propagated this a couple months ago, and it's already way prettier than this one. And it's a good way to just get more herbs. Herbs are really good with propagating like that. You want to avoid woody parts of the plant. You want that new flexible growth. So if you think of a rosemary, if you've ever seen a mature rosemary, it grows kind of like a small tree. It's like a bonsai. And the trunk, that's really woody. And the older branches, lots of wood. Those aren't going to propagate as well. I mean, you could try it, but really what you want to see is that flexible new growth that doesn't have a lot of wood. And then soil is actually pretty much the same process, but plant it in soil, whatever you want to use, as long as it's not too chunky. I would say like minimal bark, like 35% bark or less, and just a good mix of organic material in there too. You want to keep it moist, but don't let it sit in water. So when I do soil propagation, I normally have to water them maybe every 2 or 3 days. It depends on the environment you're growing them in, but I don't want to let them get bone dry, because again, those baby roots, they need water and they're much more sensitive. Yeah, like I said, herbs are really good candidates for this. And cold hardy figs and dwarf pomegranates, I'll talk about the dwarf pomegranates soon, can be propagated in soil too. So now I just have a list of some herbs and spices that I've had good luck with. Basil, thyme, lavender. Again, that one it likes to stay drier than the rest. Sage, parsley, mint, the lemon balm and lemongrass, and the curry plant. I put a bunch of question marks with this because a coworker told me that she had good luck growing the curry plant inside, but I haven't done it myself. So I encourage you to experiment with it. But honestly, herbs are the best. They're so easy to grow. They're so fast growing. You can do them in a sunny window, honestly, probably year round. Like if you have a grow light, it would be better. They might get a little lanky, but it's kind of okay if basil is lanky because you're eating the leaves. So if you don't have a grow light, I would do herbs. Leafy greens, these are really popular to start in creepy basement hydroponic setups. So these are the best candidates for starting indoors if you're wanting to plant them outside. It is much harder to grow to harvest without a whole setup. You need a lot if you want to get them to the point where you can eat them regularly, which if you want to do, absolutely do it. But I want to manage your expectations. It does take a lot to get leafy greens to harvest. You need some really good lights for that, and you really got to monitor it closely. Citrus, these are very, very popular. Lemons, limes. You can buy these at any garden center, Lowe's, stuff like that. In my opinion, it's best if you bring them outside in the summer. Even if you're in an apartment and you have a sunny balcony, that's okay. I think they really enjoy our heat and humidity and all that light. And then when you bring them in, put them under a grow light. They will not be happy in what you think is a sunny window because, again, it's winter in St. Louis and it's not going to be very sunny. So get them a grow light. Pomegranates. I started growing these a couple years ago, and it's one of my favorites. So I got it from an old coworker. It's a dwarf pomegranate. So it's like maybe about this big. It might get a little taller, and it's adorable. It's super cute. Like, it's good decor. And you can get fruit on it inside if you leave it inside year round. It does need a lot of bright light. If you're wanting to get fruit off of it, I would put it under a grow light. And we're just about done. I just want to give you a few last reminders that plants aren't perfect. They aren't always pretty. Sometimes plants are just ugly, and sometimes they just die, even if you do everything right. I have been working in horticulture for like 10 years. Sometimes plants just kick the bucket. Nothing's changed. We were doing everything right. It happens. They're alive. But to keep in mind, often ugly plant parts are an indication of something being wrong. But sometimes it's just the way they are. If you see yellow leaves, it could be an indication that your watering schedule is off. Or it could just be that it wanted to get rid of old growth to make space for new growth. Doesn't always mean you're doing something wrong. And you can't feed your whole family growing plants in your living room. I'm sorry. I know it's so much fun to grow food and then eat it, and it's great, and I want you to do it. But I want you to keep in mind you're still going to have to go to the grocery store. And finally, use your resources. This is what we're here for. We can help with education. We can help with figuring out what's wrong. We can troubleshoot. We've got stuff online about recommended varieties for different plants. So here is my email and our website, seedstl.org, and you can shoot me an email. Again, my name is Chani Sorkin, and it's csorkin@seedstl.org. Please feel free to email me photos and just be like, oh, what's wrong? Or rate my setup, anything like that. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and I will take questions. Thank you all so much for being here.